Okay. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on this panel and helping support WOA. And a huge thank you to all of our panelists too for being here and the technical development and our outreach team for making this possible. My name is Emily. I'm from Georgia Tech, and I'm part of the WOA technical development team, as well as the team that is dedicated to bringing you national panels such as this and helping our greater community to better have more information about the aerospace industry. At any point during our panel, if you have any questions that you want to submit to our panelists, any questions that you have that you want the panelists to answer, please submit them at tiny.cc/gradq and I will get to your question as soon as possible. Um, Before we get started, I just wanted to really quick introduce WOA and basically what we're all about. Um, So first of all, we are a national female-led coalition of aerospace engineering degree programs. And our mission is to help students from underrepresented backgrounds advance in the industry. We are spread across 17 chapters in the US and have more than 500 members nationwide. We were formed under AIAA's Integration and Outreach Division, which means that we also collaborate with them on a lot of events. So um, we've gotten a lot accomplished so far. We have the AIAA SciTech 2019 conference on diversity, a panel on diversity. We've had the Women in NASA virtual panel. We've had the International Astronautical Congress. And we also have a growing presence as well as the different events and panels that we're currently hosting now. And we only aim to reach higher by helping our members develop in their professional and technical development skills and expand our impact to a lot more chapters, and also reaching out to K-12 and younger students and helping them getting interested in the aerospace industry early on. So that is a little bit about us. And for some of our upcoming events, we have a virtual panel on, or virtual talk basically, about cultivating your online presence that is led by Mary Lisa Pegg, and basically learning more about how to use LinkedIn effectively to increase your digital presence. You can sign up at tiny.cc/BOA LinkedIn. And as for our next panel in our graduate series, um, it's basically going to be informing you guys about all of the different paths that you can take, such as BSMS 5-year programs, if you just want to go for a master's, if you want to go forward for a PhD, how the pros and cons of all of those, and also if you want a technical versus a non-technical degree, how you would go about that. You can also feel free to RSVP at tiny.cc/grad RSVP. And as for if you want to join us in making an impact in the aerospace industry and helping people in underrepresented backgrounds have more information and reach out more in this industry, you can feel free to sign up at tiny.cc/WOA volunteer, and we'll match you up with any respective subcommittees that match your interests. Would love to have you. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and briefly introduce our panelists. So first of all, we have, get to the slide real quick. Vidya Vishwanathan, a second-year PhD student at Virginia Tech. We have Aarohi Shah, a fourth-year PhD candidate at Georgia Tech. We have Mark Moretto, a PhD student at University of Colorado Boulder. We have Cadence Payne, a Morehead State University graduate and a PhD student at MIT. And Bailey Burns, a master's student in space resources at Colorado School of Mines. So if I could very quickly have our panelists introduce themselves with their research or their career focus, as well as where they went to undergraduate school versus where they went to graduate school.
All right, I guess I'm first on the list, so I'll go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Vidya. As Emily mentioned, I currently go to Virginia Tech. I also went to Virginia Tech for my Bachelor's of Science in Aerospace Engineering. I graduated in 2018, decided to stay here, be a Hokie for longer. I am actually on the direct PhD path, probably We'll explain why later in this session. And my research is in experimental fluid dynamics, looking at turbulent flow over rough surfaces.
Okay, I think I'll go next. Hello, everybody. My name is Aarohi. As Emily said, I'm a fourth year PhD student at Georgia Tech. I did my undergrad back in India in aerospace engineering as well. And initially, I came here as a master's student and then transitioned into a PhD program. And yeah, I'm also actually a graduate representative at WOA in Georgia Tech. So yeah, great job, WOA, for doing this.
I'm Mark Moretto. I'm a third year PhD student at University of Colorado Boulder. I did my undergrad at University of Maryland, where I studied aerospace engineering and astronomy. And then I study the orbital environment around active comets.
Hi, I'm Cadence Payne. I'm currently a third year PhD student at MIT. I did my undergrad at Morehead State University in Kentucky, where I studied space science with a minor in astronomy. And now my research is primarily on CubeSat technology, where I'm focusing on studying the low frequency emission from the aurora using a small spacecraft with a large floppy antenna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bailey. I'm a master's student at Colorado School of Mines. I got my undergrad there, and that's how I got tuned into their space resources program. I really want to go on for my PhD, so listening to all you guys is super cool. But I chose space resources as a master's probably because I have a little bit of a unique background that I'm also working right now. I work for Paragon Space, working on the life support system for the lunar lander. And overall, what I'm trying to do is bring together all the different pieces to figure out how to do a moon base, a lunar base. So that's my background.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. For our first question, let me just start off by asking everyone what degree you were pursuing. Sorry, I'm okay. What degree you were pursuing, and what were your motivations for going into grad school?
Do you want us to go in the same order, Emily?
Whichever order is more comfortable for you guys, but it's up to you.
Okay, well, I'll go first again. So as I mentioned, I am pursuing a PhD. And what was the other part of the question, Emily?
What degree you were aiming to pursue, and what were your motivations for going to grad school?
Okay, so I so when I was an undergrad, I knew I wanted to do grad school because I didn't really know what sort of niche I wanted to get into. The thing about aerospace is that there's so many cool avenues. So in undergrad, I did research in structures. I also did research in satellite radio communications. A lot of my internships were in stress analysis and design. And then my senior year, I did a research position during the semester with a professor who's my current advisor in the aerodynamics, fluid dynamics experimental sort of field. And he sort of encouraged me to continue to apply to grad school. And I decided to stay at Virginia Tech because I didn't really know what exactly I wanted to do. My intention was to just do a master's first to kind of figure out what my niche was. And then, the way the professors often do, they kind of trap you into the PhD program. And, I really liked what I was doing. So I decided to stay for a PhD.
Hey, Vidya, before anyone continues, I'm so sorry, Kim. I missed you in your introductions. Could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, that's okay. No problem. I was like, ooh, I don't know what to do. Hey, everybody. I'm Kim Westbrook. I'm currently working full-time at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab on the spacecraft integration and test team for the Europa Clipper spacecraft. And I'm doing their part-time study program for a master's degree and going on to the part-time doctoral program afterwards. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay.
continuing on with the question of what degree you were aiming to pursue and what were your motivations for grad school?
As I
Yeah,
can,
go ahead, Mark.
uh, uh, yeah, so I just really like doing research in undergrad. Yeah, I worked in a lab all the way through undergrad, and then yeah, I decided that that's kind of what I wanted to do for a career. And from what I gathered, the best way to stay doing research is to get a PhD. Otherwise, from what I've heard, you end up getting pushed into more management positions or things that are less research oriented. So that was my real motivation.
Yeah, I think for me, it was like I did some undergraduate research, but that was mostly like grad students telling you to do something, right? Like small bits of things, which I right now tell undergrads to do as well. But so that was my experience with undergraduate research. But then I think it was the motivation that I kind of wanted to work independently. And I was like, if I for a company, I'm not going to get that gain like skill set. So I wanted to try able to work independently, and that's why I thought of first doing a master's. Of course, then I got sucked into the black hole, and I'm doing a PhD now, almost finishing next year. But yeah, that was the motivation initially. Yeah.
Yeah, I also got sucked into the black hole of staying to do the PhD. My decision to go to grad school is actually really sporadic. So I never really had grad school on my radar. I thought I was just gonna, graduate from undergrad and then go straight into industry. But then I did an RU program. I was a fifth year in undergrad because I changed my major from psychology to space science. So I did an RU between my two senior years. And then like all the other students around me were like freaking out and applying to grad school. So I decided to also freak out and apply to grad school. So yeah, my motivation to get into grad school was just like me deciding that I didn't think that I knew enough coming like directly out of undergrad and wanted to just like learn more. Because I just love learning and also like echoing the ability to do research at a place where there were just like abundant resources was something that I was really interested in.
I think I kind of had a little bit similar in the fact that I did do a year working in industry, and I do still work in industry, but it was very much I want to keep learning, I want to keep doing the research, and that's why I'm trying to do both of them right now. I'm not going to lie, guys, it's a little tricky to do both, so be wary of that if you're considering doing that. But the other reason I chose my master's specifically is because this is the first of its kind of program right now at Mines that they're offering in space resources, in situ resource utilization, that kind of topic. And coming as I had my undergrad in mechanical engineering, this is more like kind of planetary science, which I had no background in. And I realized to be kind of the well-rounded aerospace engineer that I want to be, I need to start learning about all these different aspects that I didn't necessarily get in my undergrad.
Okay, awesome. I've been hearing that my volume was a little bit bad. Is it a little bit better now?
A little bit.
Okay. I'll keep trying to figure out. In the meantime, um, so I have an audience question. Are there any recommendations for those contemplating staying in the US versus going abroad for grad school? Um, because sometimes it's hard to decide between pursuing schools that they like in the US and also schools that potentially are abroad that may be a little bit better suited.
I don't think any of us are necessarily abroad. We're obviously all U.S. schools, but I kind of looked into other programs and stuff like that, some in Europe and stuff. And like I said, this was just the best fit for me personally and what I want to do. And I think if that's the case, you really should do the research. And if it's abroad, I would say almost go for it. If that's truly, they've got the niche for it, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, eventually it matters on to what you want to work on, right? So if there is some school in Germany which is doing something really fascinating which you are interested in, I think yeah, go for it. But like also speaking from the I did my undergrad back in India and I came here. So having two degrees in different countries, I think it adds a lot onto your experience in general. Like different cultures, you learn a lot. But I think the priority should be on what you want to work on than like traveling, because that maybe you can do later on for a job or something. But yeah, I mean, if eventually what you want to do lies in a different country and that's good, then yeah, definitely go for it, because I think it's a good experience too.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo what Aarohi said. Is I think it depends a lot on what you want to end up doing. So in undergrad, I actually got through research. I got to go to France and do an internship there for a university, and I thought the culture was a little bit different, which is a great experience. And the tracks to kind of pursue a full-time career from there is different because your advisors know different resources or different people, and they can offer different experiences that way. And I knew that I wanted to end up um, at working for a company that is based in the U.S. That's just my personal preference. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to apply solely in America.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and ask. So how many grad schools did you guys apply to, and how many did you get accepted into?
Okay, I'll go first again. So I actually didn't apply to any other schools. I was in that sort of period of I kind of got roped into grad school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I did actually go as far as like I took the GRE. I had my professors send recommendations to all these different schools. But when I started looking at the programs, I really found that I really, really liked my advisor. I really respected his research. I really respected him as a person. And I decided why go somewhere else when I'm really, really content with what I have at Virginia Tech. So I ended up actually not applying anywhere else because I didn't feel that connection, so to say, with any other schools. And that's just my personal experience. So I would say my recommendation is to find an advisor that you like, and that's how you decide to where to apply. And that's what I decided to do.
I'm in the same boat as I only applied to Hopkins because Hopkins has their doctoral program. You're allowed to use your regular work to write your dissertation, and they even give 200 hours a year paid to write your dissertation for just the work that you're doing anyways. So this was, I'd say, just go where with the opportunity and the fit that's best for you.
That's a really sweet gig.
A sweet deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only applied to 4 schools, which a lot of people told me was very risky, but whatever. So I applied to Morehead, where I was currently, because they had a new master's program. And at the time, like I only wanted to get my master's and then work. So I wasn't really looking at long-term PhD programs. So I applied to MIT, the University of Michigan, Colorado Boulder, and Morehead. I got rejected to Michigan rejected me because I like messed up a part of my application. And then CU Boulder like never responded, so I'm assuming that I was also rejected there. And then MIT like accepted me, so like I had 2 options at the end. Yeah, I got very lucky.
I had applied to about 8 schools, and I think I got into about 4. Um, and then sometimes you just like don't really hear back, like especially if you're applying to a PhD program. I think admissions is kind of like amorphous, and it depends on if a professor wants to work with you or not. So like after I had accepted my CU offer, which I did, pretty late in the game, admittedly, I got an email from someone at Illinois that wanted to like interview me, and so I was never like formally rejected, but I also, was never like formally accepted. So it's kind of hard to put numbers on that.
All right, thank you. I have an audience question here. So, what if you still don't know what you want to focus on in grad school? Do you guys have any advice on that?
Undergraduate research. Do all the undergraduate research you can. So I didn't know what I wanted to focus on, and that was this whole dilemma that I was experiencing my senior year of like there's so many cool topics, and I think just it's as important to find what you hate than it is to find what you like, because you don't want to end up doing something that you hate for the rest of your life. So you might as well get that out of the way early. So what I found was I was really horrible at radio communications. I thought I commend anyone who can do it, but I'm really bad at it. But I knew that I wanted to do something with, technical, but hands-on. So that's how I found my experimental route. And the fact that I chose fluids over structures was just purely because I really liked my advisor. I liked the work. I thought it was really cool. But given another alternate universe, maybe I would have pursued structures. But I think undergraduate research really helped me discover my niche there. So just go email all your professors, ask them what kind of research they do, talk to their grad students, because often they will give you kind of the bold-faced truth of how it's like to work as in that specific field. So that's how you can figure out what you want to do.
So I'm not obviously PhD, I'm master's, but the one tip I got since I'm now looking to go for PhD was do not just kind of know the direction you want to go for your PhD. They said that when you get into your PhD, it's not the time to experiment. That's not the time to figure yourself out. You go to Europe for a year to do that or whatever. So you kind of have to know what you're doing. And if you don't actually know what you want to do yet, go into industry, go get a master's, do research in undergrad or something like that, and find your way before you jump into some sort of commitment like that. I don't know, that's coming from what I was given advice to, so I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's what I heard.
I would push back just a little bit. I still personally don't know what I want to do with my life, but I found something that I enjoy doing. So I would agree with the comment that it's really important to also explore and find the things that you don't want to do. So I know for a fact that I enjoy doing this one thing, but I picked a topic that's kind of tangentially related to a lot of different things that I could eventually explore in life. But your PhD is obviously it's a binding experience for 3 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years, however long it takes you to to complete it. But you're not I think there's a misconception in the fact that when you do a PhD, that's the topic that you're going to do for the rest of your life, and that's completely incorrect. I don't know. I was given the advice that choosing to do a PhD is proving to yourself and to others, I guess, that you're capable of becoming an expert on a topic in a short period of time. And that's a really important skill set that you gain from the process. So yeah, just keep that in mind that you're not tied to that subject for the rest of your life, even though you're inevitably going to be very good at it by the time you get done.
And I mean, even just for admissions, when you're talking to professors, you definitely want to, make it seem like you've thought it through and that you're, really capable of doing this thing for at least, the next 4 or 5 years. Because, it's really important for them because they're also investing a lot of time and energy in you. And they don't want you to, flake out. But of course, if you have a good advisor, they'll be okay if you decide you want to, only get your master's, then leave or go back to industry.
I would also say that it's not, there is a point during grad school at which point it's too late to change your topic, but, within your first semester or your first year, you can explore projects within depending on the flexibility of the funding from your advisor, you can explore different projects that they have as well. So it's something that you can communicate with them. If you really, truly hate what you're doing, then it's probably not a mutually fun experience for your advisor or for you. But I'd like to echo what Cadence said, is because that was one of my fears when I was going to pursue a PhD, because initially I only wanted to do a master's, was the thought that I would be locked into my topic forever and I would be only able to work on this specific topic. And who actually kind of relieved me of this thought was my advisor, but also my mentor at my internship. I worked a few summers at Boeing, and he basically told me don't let this stop you from pursuing an education. He worked on aircraft icing in his for his PhD, and then now works on spaceplane stuff. So it's really, like Cadence said, your ability to show the world that you are able to work hard and are adept at your topic, and it added plus to have a doctor in front of your name so people take you seriously.
All right, thank you. So I have a basic question about, so basically, what was your process in getting funding for your project? And if you were to get funding from like a professor, did you discuss it like before or after you got into the program?
Yeah, so when I got into CU, my offer letter came with basically like a statement from the school that they were going to fund, or they were going to at least help my advisor out with funding me for the first year to get footing, on the ground. That's not necessarily, what happens to everyone. Um, a lot of my friends that came in there, um, advisors had specific projects that they were working on, and sometimes it's only for a semester, sometimes they TA'd for a semester. Um, but then after that, uh, I spent a lot of time my first year applying to fellowships, and I got one called NSTRF, which is now NSTGRO, which is through NASA, and it's one of the fellowships that actually binds you to your topic. So they're basically paying for you to do work on a specific thing instead of just paying to fund you. NSF is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, where once you get it, you can do whatever you want. So they both have pluses and minuses.
Yeah, when I was applying to grad school, nobody told me about funding because, again, my whole process was very last minute, so I didn't really know what I was doing. But I think it's important to look at like your application whenever you're applying. Look at the school's like website, because oftentimes they'll have all kinds of information about funding available. And I would also recommend maybe emailing the admissions director, some kind of departmental admin, if you're curious about whether students are usually admitted with funding or if you need to like look into applying to fellowships on your own.
One plug for doing a part-time program is it's definitely industry standard at this point to pay in full for a master's, like almost anywhere that you go, really. And a lot of places will pay it even beforehand so that you don't even have to get reimbursed. So it's one big plus.
Also, a lot of schools often have like teaching assistantships. So even if you're not full time being paid to do research, you can always get paid through research or through teaching. I didn't realize that was a viable funding option because when people talk about funding, they're always talking about, professors giving you money or getting it through a fellowship, or like your project funds you. But actually, my first semester before my fellowship kicked in, I had to TA. So that's still definitely a viable option, and you don't have to pay through pocket.
Piggybacking off of that too, like CU commits to funding all of its PhD students for 6 years. And so like you could also come in without a master's, right? And then get your master's along the way. So then you don't have to pay anything, which is a really nice plus, if you don't want to go straight to industry.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna have another audience question here. Does anyone have any experience with applying straight to a PhD program from undergrad? How does that compare to like completing a master's and a PhD?
So I went straight PhD, and I was a little hesitant at first for materialistic reasons. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have one less degree under my name when I go direct PhD. But I ultimately decided this was the best option for me because I really liked what I was doing. This was, the research that I want to do. This was the track that I wanted to take. And so that's why I felt that, it was safe for me to go direct PhD. Also, it sort of saves me a year because I knew that I ultimately wanted to do a PhD. So at that point, once you have your PhD, your master's is sort of your piggyback step. Often, it depends on who you're talking to, but very often the perception is your PhD is kind of the degree that you view with greatest importance if you have a PhD. So my advisor recommended that I do direct PhD, so I would save some time. Instead of writing a thesis, I could spend that time towards my research and contribute that time towards my dissertation and not be sidetracked. Because often for a master's to PhD, you have to defer the topic a little bit. So I liked my topic. I have my funding for this topic, so I went ahead with it. Yeah, and also the fear is that something happens, like a zombie apocalypse or something, and that prevents you from finishing your PhD. But often your advisor knows life hits you, so you probably have made it far enough that you can leave with the master's, even with a PhD. So you probably have enough research done to leave with a master's. So it's not that daunting, I think, to go straight PhD if you know that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I was gonna add that last bit. I would definitely, like, you really need to sit down with yourself and have like intense reflection and make sure that that's actually what you want to do. But there's also, like, I just wanted to speak on the negative connotation of, like, quote unquote mastering out. A lot of people think that that's a like really negative thing to do, and I just want to kind of like break that stereotype, because like having a master's degree is so incredible, and you worked really hard for that, even if it wasn't a research-based master's. So if you get into a PhD program and you decide that it's something that you don't want to do, don't feel bad about leaving and going to, like, pursue your dreams and do great things.
So our next question, what's it like preparing for and doing qualifying exams to go to grad school, like such as the GRE and those kinds of things?
Can you repeat the question? I think I couldn't get it.
Yeah, what's it like to prepare for grad school and do qualifying exams like the GRE?
I personally am not a fan of the GRE. I'm not going to go into a rant, but a lot of schools right now, especially because of COVID purpose or reasons, are getting rid of the GRE. So that's something to look into. I know MIT, Aeroastro, we got rid of it completely and permanently. And I know a lot of other schools are following suit. There are lots of, if you have to take the GRE, there are lots of ways that you can prepare for it. I used a book, I think, from the Princeton Review, that was really good and had a lot of practice exams that I was able to like do with like a little disc that I think I put into a computer. I don't know, I couldn't do that on my laptop now. But yeah, so there are lots of like free resources that you can use to prepare if you need to prepare. But if the question was on qualifying exams specifically, that's a little bit of a different conversation.
As far as the GRE, I think I like it just as much as I like the SAT, which is not at all. The GRE is just a super requirement to applying to colleges, and I think as far as the level of importance goes, I think it's probably just like a cutoff point. So if you make like your school's average or whatever, you should be fine. But I think the highest importance, especially if you're going towards research-based grad school degree or grad degree, is to speak with the advisor that you intend to do research with. Have that communication, because ultimately the GRE is a number, but having the communication with your advisor of this is the kind of track that I want to go into is far more important. But applying for fellowships, I think the GRE is a little bit more important as well.
Yeah, and I think like, so I had this misconception that higher my GRE score, more are my chances of getting into some school, but that's not true. So it's like every school has a basic cutoff. So if the cutoff is like 310 and you end up getting 312, that's a checkbox, whether you get 320 or 312. So yeah, I mean, don't stress about it a lot. Yeah, I mean, it is something that needs to be done. So a certain amount of time needs to be given to it, but I don't think it's something that needs to be stressed about a lot.
Yeah, I avoided that like the plague. I got my advisor to sign off that I didn't need it and everything like that. So, but now that I am like looking for PhD programs, I'm looking at it again, and I think it's very much one of those that you kind of have to bite the bullet. I mean, we all talked about how much we hated it, but sit down, spend the time studying, and then actually, I really want to echo that if you can find advisors, it's way more about the people than it is the number on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Cadence.
You're fine.
I'm with Bailey. As I avoided the GRE like the plague. Like senior year of college, undergrad, just was like, there's no way that I can study for this. I'm not doing this. And that was one of the big reasons that I went into industry. And I ended up not taking the GRE to apply. But yeah, I'm with you, Cadence. It's not a good system.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan at all. I've had a little bit of insight into MIT's admissions process, and I've talked to a few of the people on the admissions committee, and they all stress that the most important components of your application are actually your statement of purpose and your letters of recommendation. So they hold a lot more weight in your application than your GRE scores. But unfortunately, some programs actually do use that as like a cutoff to even get your applications on the desk of the professors that you want to work with. That's something to think about.
Okay, thank you. So, what was the biggest factor that made you choose your graduate program over the others?
For me, it was this. I was very excited and passionate about it. This was the one that made my heart race. So that was for me.
For me, it was the research and my advisor. Like I think, in my opinion, the most important thing about a PhD program is your advisor, because you're going to be working with them for 4, 5, 6 years. Yeah, so we kind of had a good understanding of the research that I was going to do, and we just meshed well, so it worked out.
Yeah, I think even for me, it was mostly my advisor. I think there's no such thing as a perfect advisor. I think we all can complain about our advisors, right? Even though they're good. But I think eventually, based on what I wanted from my PhD and what he was willing to offer, like that balance of independence and at the same time finishing in a certain amount of time, I think talking with him a couple of times before starting my program helped. I think I resonated with his ideas too. So yeah, I think it was mainly the work and my advisor who I was supposed to work with. So yeah.
I ended up choosing by kind of researching like what degrees my like people who had my dream job, what degrees did they have? And like people I'd meet through work who was like, I want to do exactly what you want to do. How did you get here? And that it was a major influence on what I ended up going with, which is not what I would have expected. So.
I just want to say that your advisor is basically like a parent that you can choose. So you're like whether or not your research is exactly what you intended, your PhD or your master's is your first step into your career. But your advisor is the one that decides whether or not you graduate. So having a good relationship with your advisor is very key. So, you could find a crappy advisor, but a great topic. But, I would recommend find an okay topic, but a great advisor if you can.
Yeah, 100%. As I mentioned, I was like pretty broad going into grad school, so I just wanted like a CubeSat program that kind of sort of did like earth science, astrophysics type stuff. But I was like really lucky in finding like a program that had exactly what I wanted to do, like vaguely. But also like my advisor, I don't know, we just like really vibe together. Like visited Boston and like hit her up and was like, hey, like, do you have time to meet me in person? And she like happened to have a spare hour, so we just like met and talked in person, which not everybody is able to do. But I would highly recommend reaching out and like trying to schedule a phone call or a Zoom call now with whoever you want to be your advisor, just to see if like you guys actually, your personalities mesh well together, because that is critical.
And if you can, talk to the grad students as well, whether or not it's during the meet and greets or the orientations, because like I mentioned before, the grad students will tell you the truth about what it's like to work or what kind of style the professor has. And even the professors will recommend it too. Like the professors will say, go talk to my grad student to kind of understand what grad life is. So I think, yeah, your extended research family is how you choose grad school, in my opinion.
Yeah, most grad students will be very honest with you.
Kind of a follow up on that. Has anyone had like a bad experience with an advisor by any chance? The advisors at my school are, they paid well, but sometimes some people have had bad experiences with it. So I'm just wondering if anyone has any advice on that.
I think like my experience with my advisor is more like a sine wave. So sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, right? Like sometimes it's like I don't want to hear from him because I'm just writing a paper and he's on top of my head, like meeting me twice or thrice a week. And sometimes when I really want to meet him, he's probably traveling somewhere in Europe for a conference. So I think it's a different experience, but I think eventually, as long as like it your work is going well and you're happy with what you're doing and he is also happy, he or she is happy with what you're doing, I think it's fine. I mean, but eventually it's your 5 years are never going to be all good. That's never going to happen. So yeah, that is something to like accept and then start your grad school.
I think someone else said I forget who it was, but they said not advisors are all perfect. Right, you're gonna have aspects of your advisor where you're like, oh, I wish I could change this. But you know, you work. I mean, that's how I think life is. You work around those kind of people. It's just working with people. Another option is to also have a co-advisor. So I actually have two advisors, and it's not because I preferred one advisor or the other. It just happened to be that these two advisors could advise me the best in my topic. But their teaching styles or their advising styles are starkly different. One of my advisors is very hands off, prefers to talk only to his, last year graduating students. And, he's very hard to get a hold of, but when he talks to you, he's very direct. He's, if I have a question, he'll, won't beat around the bush. He'll answer it right away. Versus my other advisor, he is very, very much an advising advisor. And he likes to sit with me every week to talk about my progress, my concerns. He's very philosophical, so that can be kind of confusing sometimes. But it's great to have those perspectives. So whether or not it's having a co-advisor, having a committee that has a wide range of kind of advising styles or expertise can help you as well. So maybe having a committee member have other people that you respect can help with alleviating some of the pressures of having a quote unquote bad advisor. Having different perspectives that way can really help.
Yeah, I was actually able to find a mentor that I just kind of like eventually adopted to be my mentor. We set up like weekly meetings, and then eventually I was just like, "Hey, can you can you do the thing?" But she was like she's on my project specifically, so she's able to advise me like on my research. Whereas my advisor, like she advises me on my research, but also like general like life industry type things. But my advisor she's a very busy woman. So it's difficult to get time with her. So it's nice to have like a secondary mentor who's not necessarily like a second advisor, like officially, but who can kind of like guide me and help me with immediate things, just because she has more bandwidth. So, echo that. It's good.
All right, thank you. So I have a few questions here about how you approach a professor, for example, letters of recommendation or any other kind of for research opportunities and those kinds of things. What's the best way to approach a professor about those?
I think usually at George Tech, how it works is professors have an open door policy. So if their door is open, you can just walk in and talk to them for 5 minutes. That's how it works at George Tech usually. But I think right now in like COVID times, the best bet would be just to email them. Um, but yeah, I mean, emailing them is again like you're it's a risk because they might not reply. Like I know my advisor would not reply, right? So, I mean, depends if they're actually looking for like if they have someone in their lab who's graduating, right? And then if they're looking for some replacement, like some new student, then they might be eager and they might reply. But sometimes they might not if they're busy. So it's just taking a chance. But yeah, right now, I mean, emailing is a good option. But otherwise, if possible, I would always recommend like do it in person because it's always better to talk in person for 5 to 10 minutes.
You could also email their like grad students too. Like I know my advisor takes like our lab's opinions of prospective students kind of very seriously, which is good, but also a little bit weird once you kind of cross that line from applying to being in the lab. It's odd, but uh, yeah. And then the grad students also be like really honest with you, just echoing what everyone else has said, uh, and they can help you kind of like push your foot through the door. It's like, oh, have you seen an email from so and so recently? They reached out to me about working with you.
I would say definitely don't be afraid to go talk to that person that you want to be your mentor and go talk to them again. Every mentor I've ever had has been because I was kept poking them into, you know, um, yeah.
If I could add to that, so if you do undergraduate research and you work with an advisor and you decide, you wanted to go somewhere else, or even within the department, if you want to work with another professor, professors talk to each other, right? It's when people they meet each other at conferences, they do a lot of collaborating work, so they probably know each other, and it's not offensive to them if you go talk to them often that you want to work with another advisor. So they can also, give you that extra impetus of, hey, I want to work with Professor so and so at this school. Do you know them? And they can often facilitate that interaction as well, or they can be CC'd on an email and add weight to your email so that it doesn't get ignored. And then, like Aarohi said, a lot of professors are very busy. So I would recommend emailing them during times where you're not like everyone's not applying to school, so they can kind of see your email and realize that you're interested early on. And also just mass email them, to be honest. So if they don't respond first time, email them again. If they don't respond the fifth time, maybe it's a sign. But just mass email them until you get your answer.
Yeah, I think many times also like going to conferences, like even if you're not presenting or like anything, but just going to conferences, I think you can just catch hold of them and talk to them. I think that's also proven to be helpful for some of the undergraduate students working in my lab, that you just go to a conference, you find some professor and you just talk to them that, oh, I'm interested in your work, and if I can meet you back at school or something like that. So that might help too. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I have another audience question here that is, should I lie about wanting to pursue a PhD if I'm only planning on pursuing a master's in order to get funding or increase the chances of basically getting accepted into a graduate program?
So I don't condone lying, but that was the recommendation for me when I was applying to grad school, was to say that I was going to pursue a PhD. But I mean, obviously, if you're thinking about it, if you're seriously thinking about it, don't just check the box if you just want the funding. But if you're seriously considering doing a PhD, but you want to do a master's first to kind of test the waters, there's no offense in doing that. It's not a contract to say I will do a PhD. But it does generally increase your chances and the reason is because the professors want a commitment. They want these students to work with them for a long time to contribute to their research. So I wouldn't say it increases your chance in the sense of if you're a strong enough candidate, I think you can avoid having to do that. Or if you do that, it's not like a guarantee that you'll get in. But to show the professor that you would like to stay long term and contribute and collaborate with them for longer is definitely a plus. But do it with the intention that you were thinking about it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I was also given the advice to shoot for PhD on the application, even if I wasn't sure. It's like strictly because of funding opportunities. And exactly, echoing exactly what you just said. People want to, keep you around for a long time because they want you to be invested in the research and they want you to work on projects. Because like the professors are also really excited about the research, typically. So they also want you, to stick around. But again, just really, if you're committing fully, full send to a PhD, make sure you really sit down and think about it.
Okay, thank you. So is there anyone who with experience with taking slash preparing for the qualifying exams throughout grad school that could kind of give advice on that?
Um, I think it depends on the school you go to. Like I know um, CU and like, for instance Georgia Tech are very different. Where like at CU, it's it's not quite a formality, but you're they don't accept you trying to weed you out through like prelims or your qualifying exam. Um, but with that said, it is a lot of pressure. It's it is a stressful experience. But like the older people in your lab will, or at least that have been there longer, will help you through it. So just like study hard, take their advice, and kind of like really become an expert in the fields you're taking the exam in. Um, and then like a lot of people. So CU has this thing where you can conditionally pass, which means you don't like fail, but they give you an opportunity to retake one or two parts of the exam over again. Like there's no shame in that or like failing the first time, but definitely just take it seriously.
Yeah, I think at Georgia Tech it's really stressful. And I think it's probably because there are 6 professors who are sitting in a room and you're at the board and they just throw questions at you and you have to solve the question, right? And also like there's no like set of topics that you have to study. So if I'm doing like structural mechanics and materials, that's it. That's my cue, structural mechanics and materials. And they can ask me anything, right? So, but I mean, even though like I cursed it a lot, like in my first year when I'm studying for it, but I think after it, it gives you a lot of confidence, right? And I think Georgia Tech does it because it wants to bring all its PhD students at a certain level, right? Before you actually dive into your research. So, I mean, if you have to struggle a little bit more while studying for quals, eventually you need to think of it as like, okay, I'm saving time in my research because I already know these things. Like I already know these or I've mastered these fundamentals. Um, so yeah, but like every school has different process. Like even within Georgia Tech, mechanical has, I think, a written exam, and I think portion of it is an oral exam, whereas Georgia Tech is completely oral exam. And yeah, I mean, you need like 5 out of 6 votes from professors. So it is pretty daunting. But I think eventually it is also helpful, like once you're done, right? And they also give you like another chance. So if you fail once, you can take it again. So yeah.
Like CU, we have kind of a similar process, but with 3 professors in 3 kind of subject areas, and studying like in depth and like really hard on these 3 areas for a while, you start to see like connections that you may have otherwise missed when you were just taking the class and maybe coasting through or focusing a little bit more on your research. So it does have some positives.
Yeah, our qualifying exam for Aeroastro specifically, as was previously mentioned, it varies substantially based on like school, department, program, even subject matter. So it's I don't know. I would highly recommend like if you want to stay for PhD, like go ahead and ask upfront like what the qualifying exam process is like, so you can start mentally preparing for it. I struggled a lot with my quals because an undergrad, my degree was like very physics science heavy, and now I'm in a degree that's like strictly engineering. So I took an exam that was like very I don't know, very new to me. A lot of the information was like things that I hadn't previously been exposed to, so I had to study really, really hard for mine. But MIT Aeroastro, for full transparency, actually just changed our qualifying exam process. So now it's no longer the like half written, half oral, you're in a room with like 3 professors and they're just like pinging you with questions type format. We actually have like a course-based format with full commitment from your advisor to actually support you throughout the PhD program now. So definitely check in on that. I know there are a lot of programs who are changing their qualifying process. So it's something to take note of when you're applying.
So actually, I'm preparing to take mine this fall, and ours at Virginia Tech in the Aero department, ours just changed my year. So rather than an exam, it's now a sort of literature review. So the professor committee will provide you a set of papers based off of your research, and you're expected to kind of read or somewhat related to your research, not exactly your research. You're expected to read upon those papers and present to this committee about this topic. So it's kind of sort of a mini research project essentially. And so I think the most daunting part, I think, is presenting and defending in front of these masters of your topic and showing them that you are capable of getting to their level. But I think they're also aware that you're not at that level, that you're still a student. So just showing them that you're, in essence, not stupid, basically, that you're capable of learning, and then it's less daunting as long as you put in the effort to show that you're learning and also that you are capable of becoming or very interested in that topic enough to continue to pursue that sort of subject. And also, I think the idea that you get kicked out of the school. I personally have not heard of anyone do that, mostly because a lot of the students are very passionate about what they're doing. That's why you go to grad school, and also because these advisors are invested in you. So they're going to try and cultivate you to be the student that that the university holds to a standard. So and like someone else mentioned, there is a conditional pass. So maybe there's something that you're lacking in your understanding, and your committee can help you understand that. So often at Virginia Tech, the conditional pass might be you might have to retake one of these classes or supplement a class in your plan of study so you can improve that understanding. And it's not to screw you over; it's to help you become a master at your topic. So studying for it really helps you become more confident what you're doing, and yeah, become a master at your subject, I guess.
All right, thank you so much. Since we're getting close on time here, I'm going to maybe do one or two more questions for audience. Um, so what are your current plans post grad school, and how do they differ? How do they differ from the plans you had at the beginning of undergrad?
I'm going to jump in real quick. I think your perspective completely changes when you go to grad school. I remember when I was an undergrad, I was like, I don't want to work for the government. I want to work, in industry. And now that I'm in grad school, I realize that the government does a lot of cool stuff. So that kind of doors opened up again for me. And I think you have different perceptions on what you want to do with your career. I realize, there's a lot of avenues with research that maybe I don't want to do more, industry related topics. I want to work in the national lab or maybe work on a topic or a fundamental research topic. So I think that really changes your perspective by going to grad school and meeting other grad students and advisors during conferences. So for me, it has changed significantly for the better. I think what I've realized that there's some doors that maybe I can close, but other doors have opened for me by going to grad school.
Yeah, I think in my undergrad, I wanted to work for the industry, and then but I came in as a master student just to get a little bit in depth on a particular topic. And while I was doing my master's, I realized that I enjoy doing research, so ended up doing a PhD. And now that I think I'm close to graduation, I have completely flipped, and I'm looking at academic positions. So since I enjoy doing what I'm doing so much that I don't think like doing a 9 to 5 under a boss is going to give me satisfaction. So I want that independence of doing research on what I really like doing. So I'm going to be pursuing academic positions. So yeah, I mean, over the I think span of those 8 to 9 years, you change a lot in terms of what you want to do. But I think that's just all the experiences that you're gaining, and you end up realizing what you actually enjoy doing.
The other thing I'll say is that kind of I think like your path becomes clear as you go through that. Like, when I was an undergrad, I chose my undergrad in mechanical engineering solely because I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. And it was the broadest subject. Well, now because of my master's, I learned about this thing called lunar regolith. And now I say that word like 20 times a day. You know what I mean? So like you kind of find your way as you go through your programs.
Yeah, definitely echoing that. Like, it's perfectly okay not to know what you want to do, even coming into like a PhD program. Like a lot of my friends and I are still kind of feeling out different options. like I personally want to become a professor, but I'm not like, you know, necessarily tying myself to that. Like I'm still open to industry positions and really kind of just whatever opportunities come along in the future.
I definitely never saw myself going into a doctoral program, and I wish that in my undergrad I had been kind of more exposed to the options. I was only kind of exposed to it by my coworker who designed the heat shield for the Parker Solar Probe. She's like, "Oh yeah, and I'm writing my dissertation on it." I was like, "What? You can do that? It's an option?" So I think it's important to kind of like shine light on all the different options and paths that you can take.
And definitely like in your PhD, you can like you have the opportunity to talk to people kind of in all walks of life. Like uh, obviously, most of the people in the beginning of your PhD that you interact with are your professors who chose the academic route. Um, but at least that in our lab, we have a lot of collaboration with industry companies like Draper and different NASA centers. So you can kind of get a feel for how those work out too. And you can do internships in grad school.
Cadence had a little bit of technical difficulty, so I'm going to give her a chance to answer the question if she needs to.
Sorry. Yeah. My computer decided to freak out on me. I guess my current plans are still unknown, but I have definitely decided throughout my program and kind of witnessing the rigor of academia and like the tenure process that I would prefer to not go through that. That's a very personal decision. A lot of people are still up for the challenge. I personally think that I would get more benefit from going directly into industry after, but I'm still playing around or just like thinking about where I want to go because there's like the corporate route or like the small startup or you could go commercial. So I'm actually in a fellowship now that I would highly recommend people applying to called the Matthew Isaacowitz Fellowship Program that actually allows you to kind of explore the commercial regime if you're actually interested in doing that. So I think there are tons of options, and I think you learn a lot about yourself and what direction you want to go while you're in grad school and going through that process.
Awesome, thank you so much. So we have some questions that still haven't been answered, but because we're running a bit low on time, I'm going to elect to um, send those questions to the panelists later to see if they have any words of advice for those, and then I can basically just um, try as best as I can to have those questions answered. But to close off our panel, I just wanted to ask, what is your biggest piece of advice for people who are making a decision of what graduate school to choose?
I would definitely offer the advice to do your homework on multiple fronts. So you want to do your homework on like the advisor, as we've mentioned before, like having the conversation with both the advisor and graduate students in the lab, just to see, like how they are as a person, what they're like working with, what their advisory style is like. Because even though you like might really be down to do the research they're doing, you might not enjoy their style of advising, and that can really take a toll on you. Um, Also doing research into like the lab culture and departmental culture itself. We haven't really spoke on this a lot, but like social impact of like the people that you're working with and the people around you has a substantial toll on your feeling of welcome in the department. So definitely taking those things into consideration outside of just the like research considerations that you usually think about when you're applying.
I think I would probably say that, yeah, all of what we discussed today is or makes sense or is important only if you really want to do grad school, right? So circling back to the first question, I think that Emily had asked that what is the motivation? So only if you're truly motivated to do grad school, have your reasons ready, right? Why you're actually pursuing this, and only then go through with it, because otherwise it's not worth it, right? If you're just doing it for the sake of a degree on your resume. So yeah, I mean, have your motivation always at the back of your mind if you really want to do grad school, because that's going to help you also, especially if you're doing a PhD program.
I'd say, as I kind of touched on before, like if you're struggling to figure out what grad program you want to do, find people who have your dream job and look at what degrees they have, and use that as a jumping off point. But also know that you're not going to be tied down by your degree always.
I think Cadence's point of just doing your homework is really the best advice, because like even if you don't know it at the time, like your gut feeling is kind of the best way to judge what's best going forward. And you'll really get a good sense of what the program is like by doing your research.
Grad school research, I think.
I think I would say that for sure. And it is very, people like we were talking about, the advisors and all that kind of stuff. The one piece of advice I would give, because I needed to hear it, was that you can go into a PhD program. You are smart enough, because I definitely didn't even think I could be an engineer. So here we are. But yeah, just go for it, find your passion, and go for it, because that's the biggest thing I think people need to hear sometimes.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is very real, but it's important to remember that everybody experiences it. So it's not just you.
And also, I think knowing going in that you're going to have, like research is kind of a hard thing. So you're doing something no one's done before, by definition. So like you're going to struggle, and just knowing that that's part of the process is really important.
Okay, guys. With that, I will conclude this panel. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to my wonderful panelists for all the advice and all the very useful information that you've said. I'm sure it's helped a lot of people, as well as me, make better, more informed decisions about where to go for grad school. I'll send out a feedback form, and I'll try to get as many or the rest of the questions answered by people in a follow-up email. So thank you guys so much for joining, and I hope everyone has a great evening.